Welcome to the Royal Lifeguards. The cavalry barracks are situated in central Stockholm in the beautiful Royal Park Djurgården. Our regiment carries the tradition of mounted service in the garrison since the 16th century. This is also the only army regiment in Sweden which has an unbroken tradition of military music until our time. The barracks is the home of the Royal Swedish Cavalry Band, a professional band consisting of 30 musicians playing brass instruments and percussion. Today's Swedish brass playing follows international standards. In terms of instruments, British and American models has been preferred during the last 70 years. However, for the last decade or so, we see a growing interest for the Swedish instruments and how the original repertoire from that time would sound on them. Most often we have used original antique instruments because that is what we can get. But we are happy to tell you that new instruments of Swedish model are now under production again. We will now visit Lars Gerdt, a Swedish musician and craftsman, as our trumpet player Christoph Fredriksson met him at his workshop in Stockholm.
My name is Christoph Fredriksson and I play the B-flat cornet in our little ensemble, the sextet Prins Carl, which is a part of the Royal Swedish Cavalry Band here in Stockholm. And I'm sitting next to a longtime friend of mine, Lars Gerdt, trumpet player, trumpet builder and brass instrument builder. And as you can see, Lars is breathing. Lars is very well alive, just as the old brass instrument scene in Stockholm and in Sweden is alive. And in our sextet, everyone is playing on an instrument that is about 100 years old, except myself. I play on this. This is a Lars Gerdt B-flat cornet, and it's, would you say, 3-4 years old?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Mm.
So I think that's very interesting to know that these old style instruments are actually being made here today. For how long have you made these new editions of old instruments?
I started with Jägarhorn maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
And Jägarhorn happens to have the same type of bell as the B-flat cornet, so that's how I started. I had a chance to try quite a few different makes from different army bands, and I found a bell that I liked. It was better in tune than the other ones. So even the B-flat cornet have the same bell.
Okay. Yeah. What about the interest for these instruments? Do you see it?
Yeah, it seems like the younger players now are more interested than perhaps we were when we started. So it's a growing interest, but very few of them can afford to buy new ones. So they try to find old ones, and that's hard because many of the old instruments are beyond repair and they're not good enough.
No.
So it's a problem.
But the interest for playing on these old style instruments, you think is growing?
Yeah, slowly, but it's growing. Yeah. Mm.
That's my feeling too, because like you said, when we grew up playing, these instruments weren't really seen as serious. You played music that was more for like entertainment, gathering people, not always with an audience that was necessarily listening. And these things are changing right now because more and more we see that if you dig deep, there is actually a lot of music that is very fine music, very fine arrangements, and not always so easy to play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth both playing and listening to. So if I'm right, I think that the interest for this kind of music and these instruments will be even bigger in the future.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I have a feeling that sometimes when we talk about this older type of brass music, there's like an opinion that things should not sound perfect. It is, in a sense, perfect if there is some leaking through the instrument, and it becomes, you could say, almost like a cliche that you can tell these people are really into the old stuff because the instruments sound that way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It would be interesting to hear your opinion on that sort of thinking.
Yeah, there are few older instruments around that are fully functional, and many of them are in need of valve plating, valve renovating, valve restoring. So I honestly believe that some players confuse a leaky instrument with some sort of original sound, having the right sound, and that's if they have the opportunity to try a perfectly restored or new made instrument, they would realize that the leaky sound is not
no.
the right sound.
Maybe you could say that if they really cared for the music with all of their heart, it would be better if they played on this new instrument than...
Or a perfectly restored old one. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay. I was thinking that you are part of a long Swedish traditional brass instrument making. The first brand that I have heard of is Val cornets, and then of course everybody knows about Alberg Olsson. But tell me a little bit what you know about these makers and the tradition in Sweden.
Jakob Val made all sorts of instruments, flutes and stuff.
Even flutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he died, I think, 1870 or something. But Alberg and Olsson worked for him and went to Stockholm and started up around 1850. And the firm, they were in business until 1959. And I met at least two guys who worked there, Börje Särling and Roland Forslund. So it's not an unbroken tradition, but some connection at least.
Yeah.
And then we had Erik Pettersson. They made instruments in the same tradition as Alberg och Olsson, and they continued until 1975. So it's not that long ago.
But now, is there anyone except you?
You mean making this old type of instrument? No, I don't think so. Börje Särling, he's no longer with us. He made B-flat cornets and I think E-flats as well, but apart from him, I don't know.
No, it should be maybe if Roland is still
in his 90s. No,
probably not.
No,
I know he made did a great job on my E-flat cornet, but he didn't build it. But he I guess he could have
restored it. A master mechanic, really good. Yeah.
Well, nice talking to you, Lars, and thank you for sharing all these things about the Swedish old brass instrument tradition.
Thank you.
The brass sextet is probably considered as the most typical Swedish setting. We will now play a festive march by Carl Albert Löchhorn. The parts was found in collection from the cavalry regiment in Östersund and are marked Gift to trumpet player number 14 Porén, Christmas Eve 1889. The recording was made at the Royal Chapel just before Christmas 2020. There are a lot of unique brass instruments models. We will now have a look at one of our most specific ones, demonstrated by the band's principal Gustav Lundström.
Hi Gustav, nice
Hello,
to be
Maria.
here with you.
Thanks.
And to see this little beauty you have got in your hands. It's a bit rare instrument, isn't
It's
it?
extremely rare, I think. It is an A-flat cornet, which is a typical Swedish model, like a piccolo trumpet, just one half note lower than an A piccolo.
So why A flat? What did we use it for?
It was the top part of the cavalry band repertoire. In Swedish military music, the brass ensembles was in the cavalry and the artillery, and the traditional E-flat cornet, which is the most common, is the leading part, the leading voice, the principal part. And the A-flat was a sort of obligato helping hand on the top, little like the E-flat cornet in British brass band nowadays. in the artillery and the cavalry, they used brass instruments all over. But in the infantry bands, they had wind band setting in the 19th century in Sweden. So it came out of use in the first decades of the 20th century, and I think it was not just musical reasons, it was mostly practical reasons. There was reorganizations and cut downs. The army was much smaller after the First World War, and many musicians had to move. Band was combined and shut down, and also the music directors changed bands. So there was a standardization. So they gave up the brass tradition and went into wind bands all over. And then I think this specific type of cornet just came out of use.
Okay, so it says #1 here.
Yes.
Is that the brand?
No, I think it is probably a marking from the 1st Artillery Regiment in Stockholm. But above here you have the manufacturer, it's Alberg Olsson Instrument Factory in Stockholm. So it is built around 1900. You can tell it from the serial number here, 1379. And the Swedish cornet model is very typical. I think it's well known by collectors and experts all over, because the Swedish cornet is actually more like a flugelhorn, which has a typical conic bore, rotor valves, this typical conical bell, and a V-shaped cup mouthpiece.
So now we're very curious to hear this.
Yes, of course. I prepared a little piece from an arrangement from the Fra Diavolo Overture by Aubert, arranged here in Stockholm, probably by Franz Sjöberg in 1877 for the Dragoon band, actually. So our band, about 150 years ago.
And that has an A-flat
yes,
part.
there is an A-flat part on top. Not all arrangement, but in this one.